Hi, and thank you for tuning in to the Daily Dose for Spiritual Growth. Today we are in Exodus chapter 34, and we're coming off a story yesterday about the golden calf when the people rebelled, and they made a golden image to worship instead of God. In this chapter coming into new, now one thing I didn't share with you yesterday, but if you read it, was that when Moses came down from the mountain and saw the sin of the people, he actually threw in anger the stone tablets with the 10 Commandments engraved on them by God's finger himself, threw them to the ground and they broke. Oh! But God in his graciousness made them again. And as we go into this next chapter, God begins to talk about this stiff-necked people, these difficult people, these Israelites, and he begins to give them some more rules and regulations on how to honor him. There's an interesting few verses here that I want to read to you today. Listen to what God says to the people in verses 15 through 16. It says, "Be careful not to make a treaty with those who live in the land." God had just got done talking, read behind, about how he was bringing them into a new land with different people. So these are his chosen people, but they're going to begin mingling with others who weren't followers of God. And listen to what he says. He said, "Be careful not to make a treaty with those who live in the land, for when they prostitute themselves to their gods and sacrifice to them, they will invite you, and you will eat their sacrifices. And when you choose some of their daughters as wives for your sons, and those daughters prostitute themselves to their gods, they will lead your sons to do the same." What does this mean? Well, if you aren't familiar with the word prostitution, you may be young watching this. Go ask mom and dad, okay? I don't know if this is the time and place to go into that, but for those of us that understand the normal term of what prostitution is in the most physical forms, I want to let you know that God also uses that in his word in a form of imagery, in a form of metaphor. Sometimes, and this is why reading through the word of God, we need to understand context. Sometimes that term is used literally meaning prostitution, the act between a person and a person, okay? That's all I'm going to say about that. But sometimes God uses that term, which I believe he's doing here, as a sign, a symbolic sign of imagery, that sign of giving yourself over, making someone your master, giving up your value, your integrity, your rights freely to someone else. And in no way am I saying that about this specific issue, but in the referencing God, he's talking about prostituting yourself to some other God other than him, giving your life away, being vulnerable, giving up your value, your worth, your identity, and who God has made you, and giving it in surrender and reverence to another God. And he's saying here, be careful, because the people you are going to go and live amongst do not serve me. They have idols. They have other gods. They are into maybe witchcraft and sorcery and all these different things, as you saw in that time and age, all these different things happening that is contrary to my word and who I am, as I am who I am, as we referred to several weeks ago in this book of Exodus. And so God is even warning the parents, be careful that you don't give your children in relationship to non-believers, because they will be influenced by those non-believers and their practices of giving themselves over to gods that are not me. It makes me think of 2 Corinthians and a familiar verse that maybe many of us are aware of, talking about being unequally yoked. In 2 Corinthians chapter 6, in verse 14, it says this, "Do not be yoked together with unbelievers. For what do righteousness and wickedness have in common? What fellowship can light have with darkness? What harmony is there between Christ and Belial? What does a believer have in common with an unbeliever? What agreement is there between the temple of God and idols? For we are the temple of the living God. As God has said, I will live with them and walk with them, and I will be their God, and they will be my people." Have you given yourself over to false truths? Have you aligned your heart, your will, your way with idols, with things that you're worshiping and serving more than God? Have you been influenced by non-believers? This is why God in his word makes it so clear that when you, as we read in Exodus, don't make a treaty He's talking here about marriage in 2 Corinthians. Don't make a covenant relationship of marriage. Don't be in that intimate type of relationship of trust and vulnerability with someone who is not a believer, because what do they have with the Spirit of God within you? You will not be unified and be able to walk forward in truth. Challenging words. If you have time today, I even encourage you to study those chapters more. Again, Exodus 34, maybe you want to go into 2 Corinthians, as I just read. Ponder what God might mean for you in your situation from those words. It says, be careful that you have, that pride comes before a fall. Sorry, I was thinking the wrong thing. I was thinking of stumbling. Sometimes we can get to the point, I don't have an idol. I don't struggle with that. And we can have a pride in our heart, and Satan sees that and makes a little crack. And soon we find ourselves aligning with people, in places, ideologies, religiosity, with practices that are out of alignment with the Word of God. God is a jealous God, His Word says. He wants our whole hearts. We can't prostitute ourselves, even in heart, to another. Let's give our whole heart to God today. And let's say, God, you are my God. I am loyal. I am true. I am faithful to you alone. If there is a person, a place, an ideology, something that I have been exposed to and lingered in that is not of you, help me to cut ties with that I may become focused only on you. Hey, I want to thank you so much for tuning in today, and I hope to see you again tomorrow for another daily dose for spiritual growth.